What's up YouTube, I'm Mike and today we're back with another bodybuilding video. Let me get a little physique update. So I'm looking at 202 I think, 202 this morning when I got out of bed. This is where we're at, nice and dry and lean. But the leanness that you were seeing and I have no pump, so you know, it's just this is straight out of bed. It's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're back to talking about prolactin again. Although, again, this I think is going to be a really informative video for all the people in the audience who, like me, somehow managed to miss the boat on Cabergoline. I know I've been talking about this a lot, and that's the reason that I'm making this video, to try to bring some things together that I just discovered last night. I don't know why it took me so long to discover this. I had an epiphany moment last night. So I'm going to walk you through this real quickly. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, hopefully, because I know that this is for a select view. Well, this actually is really a broader video. It should cover everybody in my audience, including those of you who think you never need to use prolactin, use Cabergoline, or those of you who say you don't use anything to offset prolactin in your 19 Nor cycles, and you don't know what guys like me and Chadrick and various other people in the Discord who do swear by it. You guys don't seem to know what we're going through. And I think that I've finally gotten it narrowed down. So I've been reporting recently that I had started increasing my dose of Cabergoline, trying to offset all of my D-game issues. If you look back over the course of my channel, I have to admit it is rather embarrassing the number of times that I have been through this with prolactin. I have quite a few videos basically saying the same thing. Guys, I figured it out. I got my prolactin dose dialed in. Guys, I finally proved that Cabergoline does resolve prolactin-induced gynecomastia. Guys, I figured out that it's like, that's what's really been bothering me, because as I started increasing the dose of Caber, all of the negative side effects that I was experiencing with my broke D game went away. But if you go through the history of my channel, you'll see that this happens a lot. That I get on Caber, broke D problems go away, but I never stay in one place for any length of time, and then suspiciously the problems come back. And somebody who wanted to be a Caber hater, which there seems to be a lot of you out there, could use that to make the case that the Caber's not really working. Until last night, I had an epiphany. So my wife and I got up to our normal adult activity, and while, again, technically speaking, the experiment is continuing to run well, I was functional, able to finish. More or less things were good, but like I said in my previous video, when I was telling you that I was kind of like 90% of the way there, there's still some missing pieces, and it was driving me mental. It's never enough for me to know that something works. I need to know exactly how it works. So what occurred to me was, and what's been plaguing me for so long, is I know that on certain relatively low doses of androgens, like for example, 50 milligrams, 75 milligrams of Trenbolone E, I only need about a quarter to a half of a milligram of Caber per week to offset that. If I go up to say 300 milligrams of Tren, or if I'm taking say 100 milligrams of Tren, 200 to 300 milligrams of Nandrolone, suddenly my dose starts to rise, and I had good luck at anywhere between 3/4 of a milligram up to a milligram. And then when I started playing with the different esters, and all of a sudden my D game broke again, and now I find myself in this really relatively high dose of Cabergoline, 1.5 milligrams per week, which is, aside from being a relatively high dose, is really a pain in the ass to dose. And I started getting some gastrointestinal, my appetite started suffering, and I can't rule out that that's Cabergoline. I think it's unrelated, but I can't rule it out. So last night, I had that old familiar voice coming back, because my finish was pretty weak. And one of the signs that you've knocked your prolactin low is you start having weak finishes, and your refractory period can reduce to near nothing, which sounds like a good time, but what it really ultimately ends up doing is leaving you after the act feeling rather unsatisfied. Like you kind of immediately want to go again and again. And so you never really get that, oh, okay, you know, I got that out of my system kind of release. So suddenly it dawned on me, wait a minute, Cabergoline has a very long half-life. It has like a 62 to 72 hour half-life. And so when that dawned on me, suddenly the light bulb went off in my head, and I recognized this is not your typical oral acting drug. You know, if I decide to get on Anavar or Anadrol, or my wife takes a progesterone pill that's like an acetate, a lot of orals are more insta-active orals. Not a lot of them have. I think the half-life on 8X is relatively short. And so when it dawned on me that we're dealing with a drug that has a really long half-life, it put me back into that roid state of thinking. So everybody knows that if you go on cycle and you start injecting, for example, any long ester, Tren-C, Test-C, Tren-E, Test-E, God forbid you're taking EQ, like who would ever do that, because it's an undeslinate ester and it has like this half-life that's like half of the half of the length of the existence of the universe. If you pin it now, in 14 million years, it might leave your system, maybe before the comet comes to destroy us all. So the thing is that anytime you're pinning a long ester, let's get back to sanity, right? If you go on a Test-C cycle of 500 milligrams of Test-C, most everybody, even beginners in the community, understand that when you first start using, you don't have a stable serum concentration in your bloodstream for 4 to 6 weeks, because every time you inject the Test-C, for example, you get this little spike, and then you get a trough, and then you get a spike and a trough, and it takes time for those spikes to slowly kind of stair-step their way up to the point that you have your given dose stable in your system. So you don't really know what. And this comes really into play when you're dealing with something like Trenbolone. Guys get in trouble with Trenbolone all the time. This has been a major problem for me. So like, I decide I want to go on a Trenblast. What do? I go, okay, I'm gonna keep it low, right? Because I know this stuff destroys my marriage. So I'm gonna do something low, like I'm gonna jump to 200 milligrams of Tren. At the end of week 1, Tren is so psychoactive, I'm already feeling the increase. I'm feeling the increase. I'm feeling the come up. And I feel good. I start turning into a sexual monster. I start being savage in the gym. I've got all this aggression and this energy, and what happens? I get in the gym and I go, ooh, I want more. Give me more of this. This feels really good. So then all of a sudden I start hedging my bet. Then it's like 250, 300. So I might have a baseline dose of 100 milligrams of Tren-E, and then raise my dose to 200. And at the end of the first week, I'm feeling so good I want more. I raise my dose again. Here's where the problem comes in, guys. If you start injecting 200 milligrams of Tren-E, you're not feeling 200 milligrams of Tren-E and all of the pros and cons that you're going to get from that drug until you get to that 4 to 6 week mark where the drug plateaus in your system and you're maintaining 200 milligrams or whatever that equates to in actual serum concentration. So we know that it takes time to get up to that flat, what am I saying? Look, the serum concentration. I can't think of the term right now. So one of the things that you can do to alleviate this problem, if you're a guy and you're going on blast, and say you're going to go on blast for 16 to 20 weeks and you don't want to wait 5 weeks to get to 500 milligrams of test, one of the things that you can do is front load. So if you're planning on doing 500 milligrams of test, you pin a gram the first week, that's going to jump you up real quick and get you close. It's going to shorten the amount of time it takes for you to get to a stable amount of 500 milligrams of test in your system. So that's effectively what I've been accidentally doing with the Cabergoline. So the reason that my doses are all over the map and I keep yo-yoing my prolactin and keep yo-yoing my symptoms is because I get in a state like I was recently where I was on, say, 100 milligrams of Tren, 300 milligrams of Nandrolone. And I had depression and broke D game and all this stuff. And the second that I realized that the problem is caused by prolactin, well, I immediately want to solve the problem. That's what I want to do. Like, I want to get off the ledge and get back to good as fast as possible. And this is where I have been making my mistake. So let's say I'm taking 1/4 milligram of Cabergoline every other day. That's 0.75 per week. And I start to have negative symptoms, broke D game and depression. Let's just say that. So then I add 1/4 milligram and I feel a little bit better the next day. Because you have to understand, Cabergoline gets into the system rapidly. So when you take a dose of Cabergoline, you reach peak serum concentration in 2 to 3 hours. But that's not stable serum concentration, that's peak. So the drug will peak in your system within 2 to 3 hours. So if you've ever had prolactin-induced depression, you will find out that if you pop a Caber, you might be feeling a lot better in a very short period of time. But then the next day, not so good. So then you pop another one, and then you start feeling better. And then you pop another one. So that's the situation that I've been getting into. But here's the problem, guys. Caber is a really strong drug. So 25 milligrams might not be enough. 25 milligrams a day, 25 milligrams a week might not be enough. But doubling the dose to 50 might be plenty. Could be plenty. If 75 is not enough, 1 milligram might be plenty. But the problem with the dosing protocol is that due to the long half-life, if I want to go from 0.75 milligrams of Cabergoline up to a stable dose of 1 milligram of Cabergoline, I have to stay at the exact same dose for 4 weeks due to the long half-life before I'm going to reach a flat serum concentration, a stable serum concentration in the blood. I backed this up last night when I started hypothesizing this. I looked it up as if I had a prolactinemia. So I looked up dosing protocol of Cabergoline for prolactin. I looked up a titration protocol. How quickly, if you have a prolactinemia and the doctor is going to give you a dose of, say, 1/4 milligram twice a week, how long is he going to leave you at that dose before he titrates up? Coincidentally, the titration schedule for Cabergoline in a clinical setting is 4 weeks. Every 4 weeks. You have to stay at the dose for 4 weeks before you really and truly know whether or not that dose is working, because it takes 4 weeks for you to reach peak stable serum concentration. So effectively what I have been doing is I have been front-loading the Cabergoline, which makes me feel better really rapidly. If you pin a gram a test, you're going to feel that, okay? That's going to get you up and moving around the house. But as you taper back down to just the 500 milligrams, then you're going to be floating around in that zone that you were actually targeting to begin with. So what I've accidentally been doing, I think, and why I end up with these high doses that only seem to end up breaking my D game again when my prolactin goes into the toilet, is that I'm overdosing the drug because I'm not taking enough time to let it really do its work. Which is easy to understand, right? If you have broke D game, every single day that goes by is an eternity. And that's why I've said recently, like I made a video the other day going, oh my God, I've just been feeling so miserable for like the last 6 months, and I got into Bivol, my whole life has changed. And it's like, dude, I look back at my history and it's like, I was feeling on top of the world 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 6 months ago. Like, it's not all that bad. You know, it's easy to kind of think that I feel like the sky's falling, or if you have like 2 weeks of dodgy D game with your old lady, it feels like an eternity. So anytime you're feeling bad, time slows down and you want to get the most rapid results you can, which is why when guys crash their estrogen, nobody wants to sit around for a week to 10 days for your body to slowly start producing estrogen again. We want to run out, pin some test prop, or take a big ass shot of HCG, or eat a D-ball, something that's going to get the E2 back in our system rapidly so we can get back into business. And that's effectively what I've been doing with Cabergoline. When you're literally on the ledge, you know, when you're like trying to rig it up, you know what I mean, like test the tensile strength. When you're at that stage of the game, man, you don't have 4 weeks to wait to feel better. You gotta feel better now. Thankfully, I'm in the situation where I'm at now, where the good news is that when you knock your prolactin low, the side effects really aren't that bad. The primary side effect, you might lose some libido, you might lose some rigidity, but you'll probably still be able to function. And what really just happens is weak finish. That's what I've started experiencing, just really weak finishes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse my way into this the right way. So at 1.5 milligrams, I feel confident that once this reaches peak serum concentration, it's going to be too much and it's going to crash my prolactin into the toilet. So what I'm going to do is dial it back slowly, a little bit at a time, because if I stay a little low for an extended period of time, it's not the end of the world. I would much rather prefer, my camera's flashing, it may die at any moment. I'm going to try to get this out. I would much rather prefer having weak finishes but be able to function and take care of my wife than to have completely broke D-game, right? I'll take the weak finishes all day long. So if it takes several weeks of weak finishes to dial into the exact specific dose that keeps me in the sweet spot, that's worth it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm currently planning on taking, last week I was at 1.5 milligrams. Things are starting to look a little low. So I'm going to reduce 1/4 milligram to 1.25 milligrams, which I still think is probably going to be too much. And we're going to run that for many, many weeks. Ideally 4 weeks. But we're going to see how that runs. That 4 weeks is an eternity for me, guys. You know it is. So it may, because we're going on the downside and not the upside, the half-life should, I think, drop the drug out of my system faster in reverse than going up. I may have to do some research on that to confirm that. So I think that I'm going to pull a 1/4 milligram out, and we're just going to test the waters. If suddenly the depression and all of the things come rushing back in, then I'll have a decision to make, and that means that I'm probably not low, and I might need to go get some blood work and start trying to see if I can narrow this thing down. But right now I feel pretty confident. I'm still feeling very good, very upbeat. My workout last night was phenomenal. My mood is phenomenal. My D game is 90% there, but it's not 100. And so I want to try to get it to 100, but I'm going to try to do it the right way this time without yo-yoing the dose. So those of you who have been treating with prolactin, with Cabergoline, remember this is a long-acting drug. It's much like a long-acting ester. If you just start eating a bunch of pills and expect the way you feel right now to be the way you're going to feel in 4 weeks, it's almost certainly not going to be true. You really need to titrate the dose slower so that we don't put ourselves in this literal hormonal roller coaster that I think we've all been falling into. And that's why so many people with the 19 NORs they quit the game, they give up, because you're just like literally chasing the dragon of D game. So there you have it. I want to cut this short before my camera dies on me. Cabergoline has a very long half-life, guys. We really need to dose this slowly, 4 weeks at a minimum to find the proper dose, which is why for a lot of guys who are only on cycle for 16 weeks and they don't even get the initial side effects for the first 4 to 6, Cabergoline might not make. I absolutely hate these camera batteries, guys. I mean, it's like you start a video with half of a battery and it bleeds. That video, I had recorded 18 minutes of video. When I started, it had half of battery, and in 18 minutes it dies on me. What I was saying is that this is another thing that I do want to drive home for those of you in my audience who don't blast year-round like I do, if you're on just a standard steroid cycle and you're going 16, 20 weeks, what I'm explaining about Cabergoline is one of the many reasons why you may not have enjoyed using the drug. It may not have seemed to work for you, or it might just not make sense in the context that you're using it in. Because if you go on a 19 nor blast, you know, let's say you're not on any 19 nor compounds and you decide to go on blast, tren and deca, or you don't combine 19 nor, so it's just tren or it's just deca, you're probably not going to get into prolactin issues for the first few weeks. So if you have a 16-week cycle, say, and you don't want to just, you know, get on Caber right out the gate because you know you're going to need it, which you should, in my opinion, but let's say that you don't. 3 weeks in, you start having prolactin issues. You could start dosing a low dose of Caber at that point right away, a 1/4 milligram twice a week. Depending on your doses, probably enough to get you through your cycle. But regardless, if you start dosing Cabergoline at week 3, it's not going to be stable in your system until week 7. So now you're basically at the halfway mark, and that might be worth it to you because, you know, if your D game breaks in week 3 and you're on a 16 to 20 week cycle, that's going to be a bad day for you. If you're getting depression or all the negative things. So, you know, I can see where if some of you don't really start experiencing negative side effects until the 8 or 9 week mark. I know that when I take tren, usually it's 8 to 9 weeks in. If I'm starting from a point of 0 before I really start to feel the extreme doom and gloom, at that point, it may or may not be worth it knowing you're going to jump off at 16 weeks to even mess with it. So those of you guys who live in the country, I know a lot of people have been complaining they have a hard time sourcing this. If you keep your 19 nor cycles relatively short and you're willing to put up with some misery, you could probably avoid ever having to use this drug. But if you're going to do what I do and you're going to include a 19 nor drug in your long-term cycle, it is unavoidable. And I am going to figure out how to titrate this dose properly to figure out how to dial it into the sweet spot. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the next however long it takes. So right now, it's still currently 250 milligrams of NPP, 100 milligrams of Tren E. My wife doesn't know. I increased my Masteron slightly. I've been taking 600 milligrams of Masteron. And now it's going to be like 700. So I'm going to work slowly up to 800 just to kind of, I don't want to put too many variables in the mix. But I am kind of rededicated. I feel so good now that I'm finally ready to get back on focused on growing again. I know we're all the way into April on the road to 2025 cycle, and I'm stuck at 202. I just haven't been getting it done. I start work next Monday. Next Monday, you may not see much of me next week. I've got I got a pretty busy week coming up next Monday. So we'll see how things go next week, getting started. But I just want to make this quick video because I know most people in the community fully understand long-acting esters and how you can't expect to feel the full effects of Test E or C or Tren E or Mast E, you know, the day you pin it. And yet when it comes to ancillary drugs, we're often used to being able to dose them very quickly because they tend to be short acting. And unfortunately, that's not the case with Cabergoline. So I think that it is almost certain that in the long run, I don't need 1.5 milligrams of Caber, and that when I titrate my dose properly, we're going to find out that I can get away with substantially less and get my D game back to 100% instead of the 85 to 90% that it's at today. So there you have it. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.